Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, and this is the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program, and we are joined by the legendary Duane Eddy. Duane, it's so good to see you.
Well, it's nice to be seen. At my age, it's nicer to be seen than viewed.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I know the show's relatively new, but we're broadcasting in the same area that you were born in. Tell us about your time in our area, and specifically being born in Corning, New York.
Corning, New York. I was always very proud of that because everywhere I'd go and whenever they'd interview me and ask where I was born, I'd say Corning, and they'd say, "Where's that?" I said, Corning, New York, Corning glass. And wherever in the world is famous all over the world. So not any further.
Yep. And you spent not as much time in Corning, but you've been grew up in the surrounding areas to a point, right?
Yeah, we lived in Corning for the first several years, and then we moved up to Bath for a few more years, and then on up to north of Branchport and Keokuk Lake.
Oh, sure.
West of Branch.
Yeah.
And Guy, little crossroads.
Yeah. When you look back at your time in our area, what do you think of? What are the fond memories? Was it a place that you loved?
Oh, yeah. I loved it because my dad was a bread man for a company called Quebeco Bread.
Oh, okay.
And he used to leave the house at 4 in the morning or something, and sometimes he'd take me with him as I was getting older. And I'd ride with him. He drove almost 100 miles a day and serviced the bread to all the little shops and stores out in the country and crossroads, places like that, and within an area around Corning. And I loved walking in that bakery in the mornings on the mix of gasoline and baked goods. I know it sounds silly, but it was a pleasant combination, and it changed every once in a while. And of course, once I got in the truck, all I could smell was hopefully what I would get later, a cupcake.
So with that much traveling, you actually saw a lot of the area in a short period of time. Hundreds of miles?
Yeah, he went up along and then when he went to Bath, he worked for NBC there, in their bakery, and we'd go all up and down the Finger Lakes and cross over the mountains there and do the mountains between them and or the hills, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. And then when I lived in Guyana, guys, it was 7 miles over to Penn Yan, where I went to junior high school, 7th and 8th grade. Yeah. Then we moved to Arizona.
Well, but speaking specifically of your time in Penn Yan, people may not know this, but you were responsible for their mascot.
Yes, they had a contest, I think when I was in, one of the 2 grades, 7th or 8th. And I used to love to draw horses. Yeah. And I loved horses, and so they wanted somebody to name the team and everything. So I put in, drew a horse and called it the Mustangs.
Yeah, still called the Mustangs today.
It's still there today.
Yeah. When did you pick up guitar? Was it while you were in the area, or is that when you moved to Arizona?
No, that was when we moved from Corning to Bath. And I didn't know it, but my dad had an acoustic guitar, and we were loading some coal into the new house with the furnace, and I looked over. I said, "What's that, Dad?" He said, "Oh," he looks, he says, "That's a guitar." "What's it for?" He says, "Will you play it like a musical instrument?" And he says, "I used to court your mother."
Did you know right away that you were going to take to it? I mean, was it one of those things you just couldn't put down?
Well, I asked him to show me how it worked, and he played it 3 or 4 chords, which was about the limit of his knowledge on it, maybe 5 chords, something like that. And so I could, he taught them to me, and I just kept playing, kept trying, and hurt my fingers. They had to grow calluses. Never really did, but they did get tough.
Oh, sure.
And, anyway, I could play several chords. I didn't know you could play up to neck for the longest time without doing anything. And
that's fun.
well, I used to play and sing "Happy Birthday" for the neighbor kids, and things like that. And then in the 7th grade, I think I sang a couple songs in an assembly at Panier.
Oh, wow.
And let's see what else. Oh, went to Hormel
Oh, yeah.
and did a radio show. I took 2 or 3 lessons on the lap steel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I wanted guitar, but my folks like the Hawaiian guitar, so that's what I got lessons on. But I only took about 3 of them, and I just rebelled. Did not want to go. But during that time, because everything he taught me I could play instantly, it was just natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took me with him to his little 15-minute radio show, and we played Missouri Waltz, and I played the lead on that.
Yeah.
And, quite nice.
Did you know that that's what you wanted to do as a career at a young age, or was it just a hobby at that point?
It was just a hobby. I didn't know that even after I started working at 15 in Arizona.
Yeah.
We moved to Arizona in 1951, and in Tucson, and then my dad went to work for Safeway there and worked his way up to assistant manager, and a year or so later we moved to Coolidge, which was a small town halfway between Tucson and Phoenix.
Okay.
And they had a radio station, and this guy, my dad, of course, being a dad, said, my son plays guitar to the disc jockey when he came in to go shopping.
Yeah.
And disc jockey, Jim Doyle, said, well, bring him out to the transmitter, we'll record something, and if it turns out okay, we'll put it on the air.
Yeah.
He did, and that started a whole thing.
So your parents were supportive of going into
yeah.
music? Yeah.
Well, in those days, I don't think they expected me to earn a living out of it. But after they played that on the radio, a friend called, Jimmy Dell, and he called up, and he said, come to my house, play music.
Yeah.
And he played piano, and I played guitar, and we sang together country songs. And so we did that around the area, and just had fun with it, parties and stuff,
Yeah.
school dances, whatever. And then, let's see, trying to think where I was going with that.
Well,
Then after that, this local country group called and wanted me to play with them at the VFW, and they said, it pays $15. I couldn't believe that in 1953 or 4.
Yeah.
To get $15 for playing the guitar just seemed ridiculous. But I knew all their songs and stuff, and solos on the records, so we rehearsed it, and then we did the gig, and that started me working.
Was country your biggest influence? Is that who you listened to? Country music?
Yeah. Yes, Hank Williams was my man.
Yeah.
A guy, my mentor, sort of, and from him I learned. Just by observing and listening, I realized he was doing his own style, his own sound, and he did it with authority.
Mm-hmm. Is that when you realized you had to come up with your own sound? You had to be different than everyone else?
Well, all the country artists did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could hear the first 2 bars of any new song by a country artist and know what it was just by the sound of the intro, the steel guitar, or they had different tones.
Mm-hmm.
Or the guitar,
Yeah.
and the fiddle, and whatever it was, they all had their own sound. Hank Snow did,
Sure.
Lefty Frizzell, and you could just tell in about just a couple of bars who it was going to be before you heard the voice.
Yeah. We have to take a short break, but Duane Eddy's promised he's going to stay with us through the break, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview, and we're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. Duane Eddy is our guest, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Musician Hall of Famer, and recent Steuben County Hall of Famer. Congratulations.
That's the one I'm proud of. I don't know, there's something about your hometown recognizing you that's better than all the rest.
I'm sure. Do you still have connections to our area?
Yes, I do. I have some friends in Scottsdale, Arizona, that their families up in Penn.
Oh, wow.
But other than that, and of course, my relatives are all in Towanda and Alba, Pennsylvania, just 20 miles below the border,
Mm-hmm.
and my cousins
What
and nephews and nieces.
What was it that brought your family to Corning in the first place? Was it the bakery job?
Pardon?
What was it that brought your family to this area in the first place? Was it the bakery job that your father had?
No. He had 3 brothers, and they grew up in Towanda and Lakeland. They were born in Lakeland, which no longer exists. South of Towanda, it was a lumber town. They clear cut it, and then they picked everything up, all the buildings and the railroad tracks, and left it a meadow, which it is now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So before we went to break, we were talking about kind of the beginnings of getting into the guitar. When did you feel that your career had taken off?
Well, I didn't know. You never know from record to record whether it's going to last.
Sure.
But I cut late '57. There was a record called Raunchy that was a top 10 record by 2 different artists and a guitar instrumental. And so by then I'd met my producer. He came to Coolidge as a DJ.
Okay.
And then wanted to be a producer, so he became one. And he got one hit in 1956, Sanford Clark, The Fool. And he wrote and produced. And then in '57, he wanted to try an instrumental, so he said, go home and write one. And so I did. And it was called Moving and Grooving.
Yeah.
They released that in January. It got the Billboard charts of 70-something, which encouraged them to say, go back and do some more, which we did in March, and just past March 16th, not long ago, which is the day we cut Rebel Rouser, and that was released in April or so, and somewhere around there at the end of April, I think. And it became a big hit of the summer.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's amazing to me. I don't think there's any movie that takes place in that time that doesn't include Rebel Rouser.
Yeah.
It's so synonymous with that time.
Fine with me.
Keep them coming.
I love hearing it in a movie. Forrest Gump was the biggest one. They sold over 14 million albums on that soundtrack.
Wow.
We had a little help from Elvis, Presley, and others.
Well, and you mentioned Elvis. You've had an opportunity, I'm sure, to meet just about everybody in the business.
Just about,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I had a very nice experience with Elvis.
Yeah.
We tried to get in the show, and we couldn't. It was sold out, but we went in afterwards, and this was a friend that knew him. And so we got backstage afterward, and he invited me, and I met him, and that was nice. And he said, come on up to the penthouse. We're having a going away. This was his last night.
Oh, okay.
Going party for all the people that worked on the show and all that sort of thing at the hotel. So I did him up. Of course, I knew all his musicians had worked with him for years.
Sure.
Sat and talked to him for a while. And then here he came, and he came right over and started talking to me. And we had a great conversation. And it continued off and on, because he would interrupt it to go greet people and talk to them. And his manners were impeccable.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Southern gentleman is a Southern gentleman.
Yeah.
You can't duplicate it.
No.
But he was treating these people so nice, and they just were loving him.
Mm-hmm.
And but he'd work his way back to me, and so we talked. He and Priscilla was there too. He and I and Priscilla talked to about 7 in the morning, and finally he had come down from the show.
Yeah. Wow.
He asked me. He said, "Did you see the show?" I said, "No, we couldn't get in." They called me.
Yeah.
Because I got some influence around here. And I said, well, I would never presume.
No. What is it like now when someone comes up to you and talks about how big of an influence you were in their career?
That's the reward I never knew I'd get.
Yeah.
And it's about all I can say about it. This is a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
When especially somebody like John Fogerty or something.
Yeah.
Comes up,
Yeah.
16% of our playbook was Duane Eddy songs, and he tells in interviews that that he was the guy. Well, I was his guy for learning off of, and there's been several, like that. Said I just started playing guitar because of you. Ones that blew my mind kind of were two jazz players, bass and guitar player out at the Big Potato in California, Don Randy's place, and I went in one night and he said, "You got to hear these guys; they're really good." And so I listened to them. They just play jazz.
Yeah.
I don't play it, speak of, but I like it, listen to it now and then. And anyway, they both came up to me afterward and they said they'd come from the San Fernando Valley and they'd heard my records. And one guy said, because of those records, he says, I played bass. And the other one says, yeah, and because of those records, I played guitar.
Wow.
He said, we learned all your stuff, and then we progressed from there, went on, and became jazz. We had some training and
sure.
Musical training, and learned about theory and all that, and then we became jazz players.
Wow. We got to take another short break, but we'll be right back with Duane Eddy. A lot more to get to, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're being joined by Duane Eddy. Duane, you've had such an amazing career. Are there moments that really stick out to you that are very memorable?
Oh, yes. First time I played the Hollywood Bowl in California, that was one. I call them moments, that first time I worked with James Brown up on the Northwest. He didn't have any hits then, but his show was so good.
Yeah.
I when I could, I'd ask the promoter to let him close the show.
Yeah.
Because I felt I like to do that anyway, because instrumentals didn't seem as strong as vocals in some of those live shows.
Yeah.
They were powerful and strong, but they'd been singing, they'd been hearing vocals the whole show.
Sure.
And I come out and play instrumentals, it's nice to have a vocal actor, so I always encouraged that. But James was knocked out with it. He thought that was the nicest thing could have happened to him, and he knew he should have been there anyway. But the shows matched him up, and so that was a moment. And playing the Grand Ole Opry in 1996.
Wow.
For the 17th, that was a childhood dream. I never knew how I would do it. But
yeah.
That was a dream for me, and one of those moments. And I got to play with Chet Atkins.
Oh, wow.
And we played a Hank Williams song together. So
perfect. When you play the Grand Ole Opry, I know you've played all over the country and all over the world. Is it still a little intimidating to play at the Grand Ole Opry?
No, it's oddly enough, it was before I played it. But once I got on the stage, I found that it was the most comfortable stage I'd ever been on.
No kidding.
The acoustics are wonderful in there.
Yeah.
And everything sounds great, and it just has a warmth, friendly feeling that from the audience and just the walls.
Oh, sure. Well, it's such a legendary venue. Is there a place that you've played outside of those but that became a favorite spot, maybe because of memory or just because you look at some of the bills that you played on, you played with everybody and they used to have the package bills. So are there certain ones that stick out for you on that?
Oh, yeah. I remember we did Dick Clark shows, TV shows in Binghamton.
Wow.
Far from you.
Yeah.
And I used to ride, they put me on these farm equipment things. I was in some kind of loader one time, and another time on a wagon being pulled by a tractor, and I don't know, things like that.
Yeah.
They were like the first music videos.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it amazing to think of how many legends were on each of those bills? And now, you look at the news and one star gets, $1,500 a ticket.
I know. I can't imagine.
No.
I can't imagine paying that for
No.
anything.
No.
A car.
I know. I don't think I've ever owned a car that's worth quite that much. But the talent back then, and also the value you got for your money, it just speaks, I guess, volumes for the time that was taking place.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Well, just that, I mean, you look at the talent and the value at that time, it goes to show you that maybe the difference in the music video, or the music industry, maybe that's a better way for me to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And it is it's like a pickup truck used to sell for $1,800.
Right.
Loaded. And then they became 18,000, and now they're 80,000.
Yeah.
It's
just amazing. If you look back at the beginning of your career, if you could tell yourself something now back then, what would it be?
Get a better manager. No, I don't know. I probably would have. There's several things I would have done different, not too many.
Yeah.
And because I just didn't know
a
lot that was going on in those days. But and I was losing a lot of money. I knew that, but that's another story for another time.
Sure.
And, but I can't think of anything. I got to meet Richard Boone and play act in 2 Acomb Will Travels.
I love it.
Plus the Thunder of Drones with him and Charles Bronson.
Yeah.
Anyway, Arthur O'Connell.
Yeah.
So I became friends with Charlie and with Dick. And Dick I stayed friends with for 20 years. 61 till he passed away in 81.
Yeah.
So those are all moments.
Amazing.
And, I'm trying to think. Everly Brothers, I worked with them and produced Phil's first solo album for RCA. Another highlight, another moment, and it's just been. I went to Nancy Sinatra's birthday party one time and drank, and
yeah,
all these people were there, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes I just, kind of like knock on wood or whatever.
Yeah.
And I wonder, well, my current producer calls me the Forrest Gump of rock and roll.
And the irony of your song being in Forrest Gump is pretty amazing, too.
Yeah. Well, they kind of like that because I just fell into these situations and met these people.
Yeah.
I met all of them Rat Pack.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Sammy Davis and Dean Martin, and got to hang with all of them.
Yeah.
And, so it's been exciting and fun, and then there's some music. I got to play with the best musicians in the world.
Yeah.
All over the world. Yeah. Everybody from Paul Schaefer to Paul McCartney.
Yeah. And we're going to talk more about that on tomorrow's show because we're going to take another short break, and then we're going to play the second part of this interview tomorrow. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WIDC TV Big Fox.